Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues and listeners, here we are, another podcast session, and I'm so pleased to have somebody from a part of the world that I love and I used to live. And the person I'm talking about is Chellie Cameron, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Philadelphia International Airport. So Chellie, lovely to have you on board.
Chris, it's a real pleasure. Thank you for having me on your show.
No, believe you me, it's our pleasure, Chellie. Now, Chellie, I mean, obviously everybody's been talking about COVID and what's happening, etc. But before we get into that, I've got to say thank you so much for the choice of aircraft there in the background. Good old British Airways, God save the Queen. So really impressed with that one. Thank you.
Really great partner of ours, and we're really excited to welcome flights again with British Air.
God, blimey, tell me about it. Huh? Right. So firstly, Chellie, just so that everybody gets to know a little bit about yourself. So can you let us know, how did you manage to come into this wild and wonderful business, this industry of ours?
Completely by accident, Chris, if I'm to be honest with you, completely by accident. I was coming out of high school and trying to figure out how to pay for college. And one of the things we had in the United States were ROTC, Reserve Officer Training Course scholarships. And I was lucky enough to get an Air Force ROTC scholarship to go to college. And here's a funny story. I'd never been on an airplane before I went to college. I accepted that scholarship really without knowing anything about aviation. But it was really one of the best decisions I ever made.
Fantastic. Well, but what a great way for people to get an opportunity to come into the industry, huh?
It really was amazing. And again, it was all about trying to figure out a way to pay for university, but I got so much more out of it. And serving in the military was an amazing experience. When, as an officer, they taught you how to be a leader first and a technician second. And so I've brought skills from those days with me, just that have really been able to inform things throughout my career. It's really been great.
No, that's good. I'm definitely going to come back on that leadership issue, because I think that's something that the whole industry now needs to refocus on and do in a different way than the way it was before. So I'll definitely come back on that leader issue. Now, one of the things that I've read about yourself is how much focus you put on customer experience and the whole customer, the whole customer value and the importance of consumer confidence and loyalty. So, that's something that's really important, especially now when coming out of COVID. Everybody wants to know that organizations, business, representative bodies genuinely care.
That's right. And, so interestingly enough, we had not had a guest experience formal program before COVID.
Yeah.
And we had done all of the work to lead up to that. And then COVID hit. And we kind of looked at each other and said, yeah, okay, I'm not sure that this is the time to start a new program. Well, after about a month, we said, you know what, there is no better time to start a guest experience program than now. And so in the middle of a pandemic, when we were down 96% in terms of passengers coming through the airport, we said, you know what, let's do it. Let's just jump in, hold our nose, jump in with both feet first, and figure out how we can look at the airport through different eyes. It was pretty empty. We still had a lot of our stakeholders though. And so we pulled everybody together and started to talk about how we could help each other. And one of the things that came out of that is most interesting, and I'll tell you a story in a minute, is really data sharing. So
Yep.
As an airport, we had a lot of data from all of the different airlines. We had concession data, concession operator data. We knew what was going on at the airport, but we weren't sharing it as well as we are today. And so that was one of the first things that we kicked off, was pushing out schedules so that the concession operators knew exactly when flights would be coming through. So my custodial teams knew when they would have to go in and quick hit the restrooms to clean up after a flight. And so it's really been marvelous. The story that just makes me smile from ear to ear is, I was on a flight a couple of weeks ago. I flew to Michigan to see my mom for Mother's Day. It's the first time I saw her in 16 months. And listen, I am the epitome of all of those sappy stories, right? The tears, the emotion and everything. But I was coming through Philadelphia to get on my flight to fly to Michigan. and I was incognito, right? I had my bag and my mask on, and I'm thinking, okay, please, nobody recognize me. And I'm walking through the airport, and one of my maintenance managers walked up to me and said, "Chellie, what are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm getting on a flight. I'm going to go see my mom." And he was like, "I haven't seen you in about a month. I want to show you something." I said, "Okay." And so he pulls out his iPad and he shows me a GIS map of the terminal that we were in. And he said, that information that you all started pushing out. Look at this. I've got it mapped out by restroom. I know who's on shift, and we're working so I can go and do the inspections to make sure that everything's coming together so that the guests have a clean and good experience when they come through. I know a lot of people are new to flying all over again. And so and it just, like I said, I think my heart was ready to burst out of my chest, because I thought, this is the pride that our people bring to the job. This is the pride that all airport aviation people bring to the job. And he was taking something that, again, we had, but we just hadn't been pushing out in a way that he could use. And
Yeah.
he was really incorporating it into his day-to-day job. It was just wonderful.
Yeah. No, fair play to you. And it's always nice to recognize people who are so engaged and they care. And again, that word I don't think can ever be used enough, but they genuinely care about what they're doing. And when people do care like that, it reflects in their own life. You can see that they've got a certain bounce. They're always looking a little bit more balanced. They're happier. You tend to think that things will be going well outside of work. It's a lovely balance, and I think
Well,
people don't realize how important time is, because it's the most valuable asset we've all got. But that time, what you do with it and how you spend it, even if it's working, and most people, they realize that they have to work to live. If you can enjoy that time and get a purpose from it, it's a wonderful thing.
do what you love as an occupation, and you'll never work a day in your life, right?
Exactly. That's a lovely saying. Yeah.
So yeah, it was just wonderful. And getting back to the guest, I mean, you know, he's not going to interact with a ton of our guests, but they see him,
Yep.
and people do ask questions, and when you bring that enthusiasm and excitement to your work, it comes through, and
Yep.
guests feel that, and they feel more welcome, and it just really makes the whole travel experience better.
Yeah, no, 100%. Now, you also mentioned there about how you guys decided to invest and act out or create a different type of DNA whilst in the midst of the pandemic. But this is a wonderful time now to almost wipe the slate clean and have a whiteboard, a complete blank canvas to do things the way perhaps we wished we'd have done previously, and now we know we have to do moving forward. So it might have been a brave step, but it's also a wise step, because I think, as we're going to talk now in a minute about borders opening and relationships and travel corridors, etc. But there is going to be a huge bounce back better, and if we're going to do anything differently, we have to bring back better. So I think what you're doing, even in the few minutes we've been talking, you're making me smile, Chellie. You come across very genuine,
Uh,
and it's lovely to see somebody who cares about what they're doing. So that bring back better. What do you think Philadelphia is doing that's going to make people who have the experience of either flying through or to or from, they're going to say, do you know something, Philly's a great airport? What are you doing to make that resonate with the passengers and customers?
so Chris, that's a really good question. And to what you were saying, I truly believe that when you're in the middle of a crisis, like what we've just gone through, if you think that the way you were doing things before is going to get you to the next level coming out of it, you're completely wrong. You've really got to change how you think and what
Yeah,
you do. And, you know, I guess I would also say that I think our people are just incredibly important. You've no leader has every good idea, right? It's the
yeah.
people that come together. And so focusing on teamwork has been really important to me personally, and to us, to the whole executive leadership team at the airport. And
Yeah.
what we did early on is we started a committee, um, Yeah, I know, another committee, right? But we called it transition and recovery.
Yeah.
And what we said to the employees was, okay, here's the deal. You know, we don't know what we're going to look like. We don't know how fast we're going to come back. This could be very long and very ugly. But here's your opportunity. If you have had ideas all along, or if you're looking at this new situation, this new normal, to use an overused phrase,
Oh my God.
and
Yeah.
you're saying, I have an idea. It's just a spark, but I want to try this or that or the other thing. We're going to give you a forum to develop that idea. So we pulled together experts from all different areas in the airport, and it became kind of a think tank.
Yep.
And the folks were empowered to propose ideas that they thought would help to take us to the next level as we came out of the crisis. And so, you know, a couple of things that have come out that we're particularly proud of. One of the first things that came out was we have an air service and cargo development manager. By the way, she started like a month before COVID hit. What a
Oh,
time to come to an airport and try and get your feet wet, right?
yeah.
But she came out with a proposal to do an airline incentive program. Not, you know, prior to the pandemic, we were all about trying to secure flights to Asia. We had a flight that was going to start in the summer of 2020 to Morocco. We were really starting to connect the dots on the global map so that Philadelphia would be able to get out to all the different places in the world. And, you know, then you're in COVID and you're like, oh my God, we've got to keep the business that we have. How do we do this? And Stephanie came up with a really brilliant idea and structured a program so that it incented airlines to come back with what they had pre-pandemic in a really quick way. So we essentially took out some of the risk by putting in financial incentives to say, hey, you know, if you can come back quicker to Philadelphia, we're going to make it worth your while. So look at our market. And you know, it was really amazingly successful in trying to get service to come back quicker.
Yeah. So
Um,
when carriers have got that balance of which schedule do I keep, where do I go? Obviously, you know, that swings in the favor. So it's no, good on Stephanie.
she was fantastic, and you know, we put into place a cargo incentive program for the first time ever, and cargo business is booming. We, you know, we could talk about that too, but you know, she put that into place, and we were able to, for the first time in, oh gosh, you know, decades, American Airlines started flying cargo only flights out of
Yep.
Philadelphia.
Yeah.
The international carriers that had zero passengers were flying cargo. And so, and we got a couple of new cargo carriers to come into the airport. And so, you know, really successful thing. And again, it was just thinking about things a little bit differently. And
Yep.
that made all the difference.
Yeah. But it's incredible, isn't it? Like I said, you know, everybody thinks that, you know, when you go into these sort of crises that they're terrible, and God only knows how terrible they are, the poor people that have been affected. But it's also stimulus for people just to come up and say, right, now we've got to do things differently and in a better way and a more leaner way and learn. And obviously, you know, digital transformation, digitalization, all these issues where people would stand back. I think this last year and a bit has probably advanced everything by 10 years plus under normal conditions. And the better we do it, because I think it makes people not always want to do everything themselves. And it gives an opportunity to pick and mix, take things off the shelf that are already tried and tested, and help some of these tech companies who have done a great job and now they just need a take up. So I think it's good for everybody.
And I'll tell you, in a really weird way, the crisis created an environment where our employees felt like those crazy ideas that they might have had would be listened to.
Yep.
And so it really fostered innovation within the organization. And that was a big deal. You know, one of the other things that they looked at was looking at our hold rooms. We look, we Philadelphia is located between Washington, DC and New York, right? Two mega markets.
Yep.
But we're a very strong market with a very big catchment area. And so, you know, we've got to own that. But, you know, we also have to be very cost conscious and you know, kind of trying to take a look at the way things evolve in our airport. So we really didn't have any large terminal expansion programs going on. And we didn't certainly have the budget to expand hold room size in the middle of this crisis. So one of the things that the transition and recovery team did was they took a look at the way they could reorganize hold room furnishings, and try and figure out ways to give people a little bit more space. And so we're going to be piloting very soon a couple of concepts, but it was all about thinking about the different kinds of travelers. So a business traveler might want to have a desk or a place to put a laptop. But that could also be used by a leisure traveler who wants to grab a quick bite before they get on the aircraft. You have to think about families who might want to cluster close together as they get ready to get on the airplane. So it was really, again,
Yeah.
about just trying to think about things differently.
Yeah, but it's good. But it's like I said, I think it's a great boost, and it's a great opportunity for people to be different. Now, you mentioned there about costs. Now, obviously, you're a financial person at heart with your education and accountancy. So obviously, that's going to be very, very, very up there in front of you, no matter what you do. But do you think now, having organisations, and especially in our industry, realising that everybody was just growing, and all they wanted to do was get bigger, do everything themselves, that reflection on sustainability and also risk and various safety and security issues, that's now consolidated. And I think there's a different shift now in all organizations to respect more people that are in risk, people that are doing safety and security. So there's a different dynamic, but also not so important to just keep growing, but make sure that what you're doing is making money.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And, how do you, because look, one of the metrics we use in our industry is cost per enplane passenger, right? That's what the airlines look at. That's what airports look at. And, when the denominator is going down to near zero, and you still have to keep the facility open, how do you balance that? How do you make that work? Now, in the United States, we were very fortunate. Our federal government stepped in and provided some relief funding for the airports. But how you apply that relief funding to take a look at how long the recovery is going to be, and what you really need to do to invest strategically at the time and at the moment is important. I'll also go back to the leadership thing that you talked about and the people. So I talked about pride a couple minutes ago. And pride is actually what spells out our core values in Philadelphia, PRIDE. So people first, truly people first. You can't do it without your people. Technology is wonderful, but if you don't have people on the other end, it's going to be meaningless. So people first, our respect for others and what we do. I, integrity. D, diversity, equity, and inclusion. That is huge, and it always has been in Philadelphia, but even more so now. And I mean, it's just really something that's important. But again, I go back to the P and people first, and that's what it's all about.
Yeah, now you obviously now you've mentioned things there as well, and what a lovely acronym and a lovely way of putting people, people first and letting them see what's going on. Now you use the word.
Oh, and I forgot the E, excellence in all we do. My apologies.
No, but I was going to come to that, but I assumed it was excellence just by the way you've put yourself across and with the customers. So brilliant. But one of the things that you've covered there, and I know that, you've got a transition and recovery program, you've got the racial equity advisory council, you've got the guest experience program, and the ACI North American chair of the US Policy Council. So a lot of activity. And you've also been nominated, or I'm assuming allocated to head up the US policy chair. Is that correct?
That's right.
So,
I assumed that position in January.
Yeah. So an awful lot of really positive, good things there. But your pride and the fact that it's got people at the front. And again, I'm not a politician in any way. I'm too straightforward and too direct, so I could never be a politician. But the fact that people should focus on people and not all the things that are different about people, because at the end of the day, we're all people. Doesn't matter color, creed, religion, where you're from or whatever. we all have the same values, we all hurt the same, we all shed a tear the same, and we all want the same thing for our families. So I think the sooner people realize that you're just walking into a room full of people, or you're walking into an airport full of people, the better. And I think that's also something that I hope is going to come out of this care focused culture that everybody's trying to support. And negativity should be just, you know what I'm saying? I'd love to have a trap door. So as soon as somebody started being negative or disruptive, you just pull the lever.
Or mean,
Oh,
it's
about, that's even worse.
Come on, it's about respect. And, you talked about the people and, shedding a tear. And I'll tell you, COVID's been hard. It's been really difficult. We lost members of our team.
Yep.
We lost a member just weeks into it. And, he was our safety manager, Jack. And, it was devastating. And how do you talk through that kind of thing? How do you make sure that people, that they know that you still care, that yes, they have to come to work, but we're trying to keep them safe. It's just really been a time, but it does all come down to the people. And by the way, in our pride values, you didn't hear one thing about money, did you? Even with the bean counter.
No, not necessarily, but I would imagine it was it has to be there somewhere, because within excellence, if you don't look after your money properly and you're not aware of it, then it's going to be mediocrity. It's definitely not going to be excellence. And cost plus is so important, and making decisions that are based on sustainability within the business term is so important these days, and people don't realize it.
Yeah, but costs, when you look at costs without looking at operational efficiency and results, it really is meaningless. And you're exactly right. It is embedded in the excellence value. And, so we have worked really hard to figure out how to contain our costs. So again, we're between those two kind of mega cities of DC and New York. We know that we need to maintain our cost competitive stature. And so we've really worked to keep the costs reasonable. And we just finished a consultation with the airlines last week on our fiscal year 22 rates and charges. It'll start 1 July, that period. And we were actually able to bring the costs down moving into the next fiscal year. And we did that through, I would say, very smart application of federal grant money, through very smart cost-cutting measures. Again, smart. You can't just say you're going to cut costs across the board and expect to be able to deliver service, right? So you have to balance it all.
No, that's very valid. That's smart. Yeah, that reference to doing things in a smart way. Yeah, and sometimes also a difficult thing is to make something that's complex simple. And if you can do that in a smart way as well, it normally ends up with some benefits financially. Now, back to the leader and back to your military past. Okay. Now, everybody talks about leader and how it's important to have good leaders, and people look at fast tracking groups of people, and they look at, which ones are the bright lights of the future and everything. Now, something that I've been working on, and I feel really strongly about, is I think now you have to have a different type of leadership training now, especially now, because of all of the social, cultural, political, all the different angles that are coming at people now. People maybe feeling guilty, people not being given proper support and training because they've been thrown into something, or they're the ones left, or it's last person standing for a job. And their self-doubt and everything is something that I'm sure is now at a higher level than ever before. So to teach people how to lead is important. But what I'm trying to focus on is, not only should you be teaching people how to lead in a different way and giving them simple tools that they can put into effect so you can see the benefit of the leadership very, very quickly, but you also have to spend a percentage of time with the people that are expected to be led. Because as human beings, we all have to report to someone, but the manner in which we do so is so important. So when people realize the difficulties that somebody who's just been nominated has when they're told they're going to lead, and they might be friends, they might be ex-colleagues. So I believe, like a 10 to 1, if you spend 10 days training a leader, you should spend one day training everybody else how to be led and how for them to be supporters and enablers, which makes the whole thing better. So the sustainability for them as individuals within an ecosystem like an airport or their own company becomes that little bit more obvious. And then everybody cares about the end result rather than their own position within the team.
So, you talked about, so I'll go back to the military, and one of the lessons I learned there, which is, they teach you to be a follower before they teach you to be a leader.
Yes, yes.
You need to and you also need to understand that situational leadership is incredibly important.
Yep.
There are going to be moments where you have to step in and be the forward person. There are other times that, even as a leader in the greater community of Philadelphia, as an example, there are times that I have to sit back and understand that in that case, I'm more of a follower, I'm more of a contributor. And having folks understand those different parts of the continuum of leadership, I think is really important. And you hit on something that's really, I've been thinking about a lot. So we're in the process right now of doing an early retirement program.
Yep.
So, as we look at our structure and the people that we need to do the job and the costs, right? Because that's always there in the back of your mind too. We felt that one of the best ways to get a handle on our personnel costs was, in a very humane way, was to offer people who were eligible or within 5 years of retirement to be able to do that a little bit early. So we have, a number of people who are eligible. And in fact, we're in the window right now of people deciding if they want to opt in or opt out. What that's done, though, for us at the top of the organization is we've really had to look and say, oh my goodness, okay, what happens if they all take it? And what have we done to build the leaders of the future? And in some cases, we're ready. In some parts of our organization, we've done a pretty good job. In other parts, I'm concerned.
Yep.
And I think that, look, we're going to get through this period, but I think that this is an incredibly important lesson that for anybody who's listening. Look at your organization at all levels, not just the top, the
Yep.
executive succession planning, right? But look everywhere in your organization and make sure you're ready. Because here's the thing. All of these folks who may potentially leave were within 5 years of retirement anyway. We had a problem anyway. And
It was
so
coming. Yep.
it was
Coming on the
coming.
next wave. Yep.
And so, I had spent a lot of time at the top of the organization, so one of the other things that I just want to throw out is I think that diversity, equity, and inclusion is something that you have to lead with first.
Yep.
And building those diverse teams, people with diverse perspectives and backgrounds, and just makes you stronger. When I came into the job as CEO about 5.5 years ago, about 17% of our executive team were people of color.
Yep.
Right now, it's 50%. When I came in as CEO, we had 33% women. We're now at 67%. So maybe a little over in the women, but as Ruth Bader Ginsburg would say, when do you have enough women on the Supreme Court? When there's 9. But I'm kidding. But it's bringing in that diversity, and we've done a really good job at the top levels of succession planning, looking at the folks who are going to be leaving within the next 5 to 10 years, making sure that we are developing people to step into those positions. But what really didn't come to the forefront, and shame on me until now, is looking throughout the organization to make sure that the organization was sustainable.
Yeah.
That's another part of leadership, is understanding when you don't have all the answers and you make mistakes, you stand up and you say, I missed this one, folks. I missed it. But okay, now what do we need to do to fix it?
Yeah, well, that's good. Good leaders have been people that have had to have made mistakes or learned from things, and that's what makes them so valuable. But I think it's great what you've done. I think it's even more important that it gets to a point where it's a natural balance rather than quotas and numbers and percentages. And then once you've established that platform or that foundation, then whatever happens next should be on competence based and capability rather than any other pressures whatsoever. And hopefully, because of the balance of the workforce, it should always be, equal opportunities for anybody who wants to put themselves forward. And I think another thing is people now are looking at the life-work balance rather than work-life balance. And at some points, they might want to be taking on that extra responsibility or extra, having to be on the end of a mobile 24/7, etc. But that might come later in their career. And I think it's important that an organization never lets any employee feel that they've missed the boat or it's too late, because at the end of the day, all good organizations need about 70% or more of people who are content in what they do and do a very good job whilst they're being content. And
That's
then
right.
if they suddenly the light goes on, it shouldn't matter whether they're 20, 30, 40, 50. If it's the right time and they want it for the right reasons, they should never be excluded.
That's right.
I think that's so important. Like you said, you need succession at every level. And let me ask you something else now. Have you got a program there where employees are allowed to upskill, new skill, cross skill, so that they've got options? Because so many people now are looking back and they're thinking, my God, I'm glad I wasn't in this industry, or I'm glad I wasn't in that department because of what happened during COVID. Whereas, people involved in the supply chain and frontline workers, etc., they've been able to work continually. So people are now starting to look, should they get into food and beverage? Should they be in retail? Is it better to go, So I think those are the dilemmas that are coming. So if companies are able to allow people to be multitasked or multi-capable, I think that's a great thing.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up, Chris, because pre-pandemic we hired a workforce development manager, somebody who was specifically tasked to looking at making sure that our airport team, that we had the right skills and the right people in the right places, and that we were giving opportunities to those in the team to be able to do something different if they wanted to. So he had started, and it's this stupid COVID thing, right? Got in the way, but he has formed partnerships with development corporations, non-for-profits in the city of Philadelphia,
Yeah.
that will allow opportunities for our staff, the airport team, as well as all of the other companies that do business at the airport, to be able to do some of that upskill stuff. So to give you a very specific example, our custodial team, the folks who go out and clean the restrooms and the hold rooms and everything, they work for us directly. They're not contractors. They're members of my division of aviation team. And a number of them have indicated that, hey, look, this is great. We loved kind of getting into the airport. We found that we really like the airport, and aviation is a pretty cool place to be, but we really don't want to be cleaning bathrooms forever. What can you do to help us become an electrician or a building maintenance person? And so we are working to provide those pathways for those employees. Now, we're city owned and operated, so those employees are part of the civil service system of the city. So
Okay.
it's a little more complicated than just saying, okay, we're going to build this career path. We have to work collaboratively with a lot of other stakeholders, but we're committed to doing that because I think it's the right thing to do. If
No,
you
it's fantastic.
somebody who knows aviation and the airport, why not keep them if they want to do something different?
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. Yeah, and they can do it in their own time, etc. So I think that's a great idea, Chellie. Now, Chellie, can I ask you something else? Now, as an airport, you're responsible for your own ecosystem. So you've got certain services, you've got customers, you've got tenants, you've got all sorts. So you're the landlord of an awful lot of businesses. Now, do you think now, and when you've seen what's happened with the amount of equipment that was left parked up, the amount of areas that weren't used, etc., do you think there's an opportunity now to have pooling services that are more overseen or supported or supplied by the airport as a service to the ecosystem?
Yeah, I think it's possible. We're exploring some of those right now. We do have an airline consortium that does some work in collaboration with us on, baggage system maintenance as an
Yeah.
example, and things like that. But yeah, I do think that there are opportunities for the airport to kind of step in. The important thing about that concept is making sure that you've got somebody who's kind of looking at all of the different pieces and parts and making sure they come together in a great way. And I think there are opportunities. I don't have anything specific to throw out right now that we're working on,
Yep.
but it's something that we're definitely talking about.
Okay, that's great. And if I was to ask you now, let's look a little bit into the future and see what Philadelphia is going to achieve, in the next, say, 2 to 5 years. Do you have a clear sort of overview of where you'd like Philadelphia to be?
Yeah, so let me give you two things, one short term, one long term. So short term, it's God, I can't wait until international service comes back. And we were pre-pandemic, and American Airlines has stated we will be post-pandemic. Let's cross our fingers and hope that Philadelphia is their transatlantic gateway.
Yeah.
And so we had a lot of service to Europe, more than any other American Airlines hub out of the US. And getting back international service is something that we can't wait to see, and then even growing it further to connect more points on the globe. To that work, we recently signed a memorandum of understanding with London Heathrow Airport. We
Yep.
think it's important to work with the airlines. We talked about our incentive program, but it's also important to make sure that the relationships are solidified with the on the ground people.
Yep.
And London Heathrow, London is one our right currently our biggest overseas market,
Yep.
and we just felt that it was really important. And I know we're not London's biggest market in Philadelphia, but we came to them with kind of an open mind and open arms and said, look, we want to partner with you. We want to figure out how we can work together on either side of the pond to get things moving again.
Yep.
And they stepped up, and we have committed to a set of principles that we're going to work on together to try and get things open. And it's we need to go to green status on the UK side, right? And the US has to take a look at the 212F federal restrictions on who can come into the country from overseas. Right now, the UK and Europe can't, but we are very, very hopeful that as the days and weeks go on, that we'll be able to make some progress. And again, we have a roadmap now, which I think is really important.
It is. It is. It's so important. And some of the things that are happening, and we spoke about data. Everything should be data driven. So if it's making sense, it should be done. And once certain criteria or milestones are met, boom. And I'll tell you something. I was supposed to have gone to Spain last week, and this week just gone, and it was on the amber list from the UK. So as long as you had a legitimate reason, which we did, but still, even with a legitimate reason, Spain wouldn't let you in. So now, yesterday, they made an announcement that from Monday, now they will let you in.
Well,
And
and it's difficult when you're talking about two countries. You're right. It's got to be a risk-based approach, right?
yep, yep,
We have to agree upon and understand what the principles are that are going to safely allow travel to restart. But it's hard too when you have different countries. Like, is the UK going to go first, or is the US going to go first?
but this is Chellie, this is what I'm saying. Like, you're talking about an MOU and everything, and that's great. I just think that they should be doing it together, because the data isn't going to change because you're on one side of, irrespective whether it's the Atlantic or the Mediterranean. It doesn't. That's not the issue. If the data shows that it makes sense, then both parties should agree on the same principle, so it doesn't confuse people. It doesn't cause complexity for all the businesses that rely on it.
And that's exactly what we're trying to do with the MOU. We're trying to say, look, we agree on these principles.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so UK government, US government, take a look at this. We think we've got something here, by the way, that other airports in the US and the UK are supportive of as well. Let's see what we can do to get it started.
Yep. Yep. No, I think so. And the more corridors and the more simplicity and the more collaboration, it's going to make people feel a lot more confident. And then you've got your Asia, Africa, and Latin American markets that you're focusing on as well.
And that's, we were getting so close on a lot of international service prior to COVID, and I think that will come back
It
at
will. It
some
will.
point. the one thing that is going to have to recover first, though, is business travel is going to have to come back to some level. It'll never be what it was before, but if we are only a leisure-driven market, we're going to have huge heights and very low peaks, and it's that business traveler that really smooths that out and makes this a sustainable business.
Yeah.
So that's going to have to come back at some point to make those overseas markets and some of even our domestic markets more viable.
Yeah.
Also looking out into the future. So you said, what do I see Philadelphia being and what are we trying to do? We are in a really unique position on the eastern seaboard of the United States in that we have more than 100 acres of land directly next to the airport that is slated on our master plan, that's gone through a process for cargo development.
Yeah.
And so, look, I don't know what your buying habits are online. My husband quips sometimes and says that it's Christmas every day at Chelle's house with the packages that show up. But that has really exploded, especially in this time when people didn't really want to go out to the store. So, and we think that that's something that is here to stay, as well as a lot of the business things that are happening in the Philadelphia region. Biotech, pharmaceuticals, you think of something that's primed for air cargo, right? It's light, it's small, it's high value, it's perfect. So we have this vacant parcel of land that we acquired a few years ago. And we are in the process of doing a couple of enabling projects to make it developable.
Yeah.
And as we go out and talk in the industry about what the future of cargo can be at Philadelphia, people's eyes are lighting up. It is something that really is exciting to see. And so when we looked at our cargo catchment area, we were only capturing about 9% of a $3 billion market.
Yeah.
The majority was going up to New York. Part of that was because we didn't have the right facilities. We didn't have the refrigerated cargo buildings and those sorts of things. This parcel of land gives us the opportunity to paint the picture of what cargo could be in the future, and to give people a way to really develop that on a site that will make sense. So we're really excited about that too.
That's brilliant, Chellie. I've spent the last 30 years in cargo, and to have some sort, an opportunity like that, and to, take into account all of the things that have happened previously, what's expected, the amount of people that will come knocking on your door to be part of that plan. It's a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. So, the horizon looks very bright for Philadelphia, I think. What a wise decision to buy that 100 acres.
And it's always sunny in Philadelphia, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I can say that. It's always sunny, eh? Yeah. Yeah. No.
I think we've got a lot in front of us. As you can probably tell, I'm incredibly passionate about my work and our work together as a team. I think this is an amazing city. When I first got here, Chris, I wasn't sure if I was going to like Philly, and I wasn't sure if Philly was going to like me. And 10 years later, here I am, and every day I wake up with a new level of excitement of the things that are possible. And I think that's what it's all about, right?
That's fantastic, Chellie. I think you're a very lucky lady, and I think Philadelphia is probably equally as lucky to have you leading it. So
that's kind of you to say. I do feel very fortunate, though. I've got a great team, and boy, when you look out and you see the possibilities,
it's amazing.
Like I said, that's what it's all about.
Absolutely amazing, and good luck to you and the rest of the team. And thank you very much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you on this podcast, and I could carry on for a long, long, long time, Chellie. And I can see, that energy and that enthusiasm, and it's fantastic. So fair play to you.
Love to talk to you anytime, Chris. Thank you for the opportunity.
And I can see how full of pride you are.
Pride, Pride.
That's it. Yep. Thank you so much, Chellie. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.